Hello iCracked fans, this is Ed Waldrop, Master Tech with iCracked. In this video, we're going to cover the teardown of the display assembly for the iPhone 7. We're going to see how difficult or easy it is compared to previous generation of iPhones. First thing we notice, the bottom of the phone still uses the standard pencil lobe screws. So let's go ahead and remove them. Now from what we know, because the phone is IP67 compliant, is that there will be a waterproofing gasket between the screen and the frame. So in order to loosen that gasket, we'd have to heat the display up to loosen the adhesive to make it easier to lift. So what we're going to do is connect our iCracked's tool, and we're going to create a lift on the display. Now this new jet black, the suction cups don't like to hold very well. So you can see there's a little gap opening here. So I'm going to come in here with my iFlex and break that adhesive. Now the cables for the LCD and the front camera are on the side, but the screen still clips in the top just like previous generations. So what we're going to have to do is break the adhesive around as much as we can, slightly move the screen down, and then open it up like a book. And this will reveal the cables. One thing you'll notice here is all the brackets that hold the cables onto the logic board are now using a tri-wing 000 screw head. So let's go ahead and remove this first shield here. Let's go ahead and remove the plate holding all the cables to the logic board. First thing I see is this cable along the edge here for the battery and connects right here. So the first thing we want to do with any of these is isolate power to the logic board by disconnecting the battery from the logic board. Next, we're going to disconnect the digitizer or touch cable, which also controls the LCD, and the second cable, which is the home button and force touch. Now we still have the front camera attached up at the top with those same tri-wing screws. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these two screws here. And go ahead and lift the retaining bracket out. Then come in and disconnect the front-facing camera from the logic board. Now the display is off. As you can see, this gasket here between the frame and the bezel, we'll go ahead and clean that up. Set that main body aside. One of the first things I notice here is that the home button down here looks like it's on the installed from the outside in, and it's held in with a retaining plate and 4 screws that are all tri-wing. And then the top area where the ear speaker, or now a new speaker, and the camera is held in with Phillips. So let's go ahead and remove the plate holding the home button area. Now these tri-wing screws are not that easy to work with. The screwdriver tends to want to jump around and it doesn't grab all that well. Now that the 4 screws are out, I'll go ahead and lift off the retaining plate to reveal the connector for the home button right here, the fingerprint scanner components, and the physical home button itself. So the first thing I notice here where the home button flex cable connects is there's a short cable at the bottom, and then this cable folds around. And then there's a big foam gasket in between the two, which means that if you try to just pop this up, you're going to actually rip this cable. So you have to almost hold the bottom down, come in and separate it just like that. And as you can see, there is a gasket around the edge of the home button flex cable connection. And this is the actual very small area which is going under the shield for the backlight. Okay, underneath this flex cable area of the home button is a lot of double-sided adhesive, and it's really strong. So you're going to want to really heat this area of the screen, because if you try to just pull up on this, you're going to sever this cable. So I've already heated it and very gently lifted. As you can see, there's a fair amount of adhesive underneath that cable. And then with a little gentle push, the home button just slides right out. Next, I'm going to go ahead and remove the retaining plate holding the speaker up here at the top, or the ear speaker. There's 4 Phillips screws. Actually, there's 3 screws holding the plate on, but there's additional screws holding the speaker into the bezel. It's a really strong magnet there. See, and then the plate comes off. We'll reveal the front-facing camera and the ear speaker slash speaker, which is held in with what appears to be 3 more Phillips screws. Nope, just the 2. There's the massive ear speaker slash speaker. Folding the front facing camera back, you'll see the contacts for the speaker down here at the bottom, just above the LCD itself. And it looks like the ambient light sensor and proximity sensor are underneath this area. And yet there's another screw here, so let me go ahead and remove that. Take a look in here. Let me come in here very gently, see if I can't nudge this up. There we go. Okay, so the ambient light sensor comes up, but it looks like the proximity sensor is still folded underneath, and just like previous generations, it's held in with a little bit of double-sided adhesive, so you may have to heat up this area of the screen to get this out without damaging the proximity sensor itself. And again, a lot more adhesive, so we're going to require heat in this area to loosen all this up. As you can see the back side here, this is the adhesive I was referring to. Now what I'm looking for is, there it is. So there's the microphone underneath this piece of foam right here. And that's what that little hole right there is for the microphone there. And then it adheres in here. And you can see there's a little thin like screen right here that it passes through. Now the rest of the thermal plate is held in with tri-wings. So we'll go ahead and remove those. These are very, very soft. This tri-wing isn't the best. As you see, I'm taking a nylon spudger and putting it behind these posts. And that's mainly because I don't want my finger back there when this slips off and stabbing it. Plus, you have to press pretty hard to break the tri-wing screws loose. And these little ends are very flexible. So I'm using the spudger to kind of push forward on that. Lastly, we'll take the thermal plate up, which is held in with more adhesive. As you can see there, there's more adhesive holding this all together. Now we also see little spacers down here at the bottom where the pentalobe screws pass through, little rubber spacers, so I'm guessing those are additional gaskets to prevent water coming in from around the pentalobe screws. There is a lot of adhesive in here. Okay, now that the screen's all taken apart, we'll take a look at the main body. One thing you're going to notice here, around each of the connectors is a foam gasket. Now the problem with these foam gaskets is when you go to disconnect them, they tend to have little bits that will fall into your connector. So before you replace the screen, you want to make sure that there's no debris that has fallen inside these connectors. And same up here with the front-facing camera. So let's go ahead and start putting the display assembly back together. Now the other challenge here is getting this whole cable system put in here. Because of the fact that the proximity sensor has to fold over and go into place. You'll see the bracket down here that it has to get pushed into and then folded over so that the ambient light sensor falls into its space, and then get the speaker contacts to also come down and line up on the pins down inside the bezel. Then everything has to come together so that this area here is completely flush. And once again, the front-facing camera cable is actually two cables where the ambient light center, prox, mic, and speaker, and then the camera is the upper cable soldered together. So if you peel this back too far, you're going to break the solder joints under here and render part of this cable useless. I'm going to take the speaker and put it back in place. This is a very strong magnet and it keeps pulling the screws off my screwdriver head. Now you're going to have to be cautious not to get these screws mixed up. If you'll notice this one here that actually holds this little grounding plate off to the side of the ear speaker, that if you mix up with the other two screws, this one will put a nice hole right here in the paint of your display. Now the home button, you're going to pass through the front. And up into. It's almost like there's a little magnet there, the way it kind of snaps in. Okay, and then the home button flex cable comes down and aligns on pins within the bezel. If you can see there, it sits down and it's got an alignment pin right here. And then the cable itself will come over, again making sure that none of that foam is rolled into that connection, and then reconnect. So the next thing we're going to do is we want to put the gasket back in to prevent moisture from going back in. We have no way of recertifying this as waterproof, but we can take every step possible. So what I'm doing here is I made this little alignment plate. I put the gasket on. And then take this. So I'm going to smooth the gasket down onto the frame. Peel this guy off. So now my gasket's back into place. Now the front-facing camera here is going to be kind of a trick because it has to actually go this way. So it's almost spring. Get it in there, get aligned. Make sure it snaps down. These tri-wings are much harder to work with than a Phillips. Now I can go and reconnect the home button and force touch flex cable back onto the logic board. Now the trick here is, see, I'm fighting with this foam in here. It keeps wanting to roll in. There we go. Let's get the second one. And the further you let the screen kind of lean back, that's how you can align the cable by moving it front and back. You don't really want to force this around. Okay, felt that one snap in. Let's go ahead and reconnect the battery. Take the retaining plate, put it back into place. Now it seems almost every screw here is a different length, so screw organization is going to be a major key working on the iPhone 7. Now before I seal this, I just want to make sure it's going to come back on and make sure I didn't ruin anything. Okay, so I'm kind of holding the screen off here and you can see my home button still works, so I didn't damage it. My haptic touch is still working. I can feel the phone vibrate. So go ahead and power it down. Now the key to getting this screen back in, it's going to be a little tricky because you're dealing with that gasket, is you've got to bring the top end down, slide it up, and then push down into the bottom and work your way up the sides. And you'll hear it just go click when everything's back into place. Overall, the iPhone 7, it seems like it's going to be a pretty easy display repair, but one thing you'll see I struggled a lot with the tri-wings, and that's biggest because the fact that the tri-wings only have 3 lobes, so it makes it harder for it to actually align correctly on the tip of your screwdriver, which makes it a little more difficult to work with. I actually used 2 different screwdrivers during this repair. One was the Tri-Wing 000 for the shields around the LCD and digitizer here. and up here for the front-facing camera. But internally, I found that the 00 try worked better, especially on the thermal plate. The 000 kept wanting to slip off. So you may want to look at investing both of these screwdrivers in order to perform this specific repair. You also notice when they changed the ear speaker from just an ear speaker to an actual speaker, is that also had to increase the magnet around there to get more audio to come out. So you're going to have a lot of fun playing with that there, trying to keep the screws from jumping to the top of the speaker. So make sure you have a good pair of tweezers handy to help you align the screws into their holes and the tri-wing ready to get right on there and put it back in. Other than that, the only other thing I see is, like I mentioned before, is the foam gaskets that are around each connector. You may have issues with those little parts of it falling into the connector, which could cause issues during the repair. Overall though, I say this is a pretty simple repair. All right, thanks for watching the iPhone 7 display assembly teardown. Remember, for all your future iPhone, iPad, iPod, and Samsung needs, visit iCracked.com.